So today I'm going to go over quite a few things to really kind of get your guys a head start when it comes to getting a position. And basically what I'm going to really focus on is give you guys a general idea of the current state of the labor market, kind of show you what's really affecting you getting a job, whether that's the number of applicants going on or how long the process is. And then what I'm going to do is take you through a little bit more of a strategic way of getting in front of the hiring managers and the people making the decisions, as opposed to kind of living off of Indeed and just applying to every single job. And then to be good at something, you really need to know how it works. So I'm going to break down what the majority of companies are doing in their interview process so you can better navigate your way through it. And then we'll go through how to prepare for an interview. You would think it's pretty basic, but a lot of people do struggle when it actually comes to preparing for them. Then there's a couple of insider tips. A lot of recruiters tend to give different types of tips, but we've really found when we started tracking it, compared to candidates that took these 3 tips that we usually give, succeeded a lot more in receiving offers than people that they were competing with. And there's just little nuances that you can really focus on. And then we're going to go through how to answer some of those questions that are really stumpers, the ones that really kind of people struggle on, and really kind of take you through why those questions are being asked or why they should be asked. And then at the same time, we're going to show you how to determine what's the right fit for yourself. What you don't want to do is just start going into companies and having short-term turnarounds on them. So we're really going to try to help you figure out what's the right fit for yourself. And then take you through compensation negotiations, and then at the same time, because we're seeing this a lot more, is really kind of how to navigate if you get multiple offers. It's a great problem to have, but it's also a tricky one to maneuver around because you don't want to burn bridges with the person that you're turning the offer down. And at the same time, you want to make sure you're making the right decision on which offer you're going to take. So essentially right now, the average hiring process from the time a job is posted to an offer being released is roughly about 6 weeks. That doesn't include another 2 weeks for giving your notice if you are actually hired. So this is an incredibly long and drawn out process. And this is due to companies really not having a defined hiring process. And essentially kind of what's going on is companies are trying to find the right candidate. Well, they find them, the process takes too long, we're in a market labor shortage, and these candidates are basically falling at the wayside to other companies or just not interested anymore. And we're seeing a lot more companies actually having to choose their 3rd or 4th choice as opposed to the number 1 and number 2. So this is kind of something that companies are really struggling to do, is trying to make a shorter hiring process to make people come in and out pretty quick. And when we get to that point, it's going to be really on to the candidates being able to make better decisions quicker on which companies they actually want to work for. Another thing which is interesting is the average number of resumes being posted, resumes being sent into a posting is roughly about 250. So if you actually look at that as an HR point of view, if you have multiple jobs on, you're basically having to review over 1,000 resumes for just having 4 jobs on the go. And so when you're sending your resume across, there's a higher possibility that you guys are not going to have your resume seen because companies are just seeing so much. It's so easy to bypass some good resumes. And what's really kind of depressing off of it is out of those 250 resumes per job posting, only 4 to 6 candidates are actually being interviewed. So if you actually do the math on that, that means that 1 to 2% of applicants are actually getting interviewed. So by applying to a job board, you only have a 1 to 2% of actually getting an interview. So, and the other thing that you can look at is that companies are actually only using 46% of their hires are coming from career sites and job boards like Indeed or say from their own website. So what you're really finding is that if you're going about applying, not only are you losing the opportunity to get in front of the right people, but you're now getting a less than 1% chance of actually getting your foot in the door for an interview. And then what the other thing is that a lot more companies now are realizing that when making a bad hire, they're now going to be losing about $20,000 for every time they make a bad decision. So the pressure right now is on companies to really figure out who the right person is. And so your job on an interview is to really make sure that you're taking out all the doubts and all the gray areas about your experience to allow the hiring manager to have confidence into the execution of hiring you. It's a quite difficult thing to do. It's something that you can't really kind of shoot from the hip or wing. It's something that you really have to prepare for and really treat the interview as a way to kind of take away, that uncertainty from hiring managers. So right now, just the way that the market is, it's really stacked against you to really not get your foot in the door. So, but in saying that, here's how you guys are going to start, or here's how I would suggest on how to actually get an interview. This is the way a lot of recruiters actually get the jobs, or when you hear companies, recruiters say, the hidden job market. It's a really great marketing technique. There's really no such thing, but this is what recruiters are doing on how to get a job, which would basically, for you guys, this is how you're going to get your foot in the door, be more strategic, and actually land an interview with the company you want. It seems pretty straightforward, but a lot of people just don't do it because it can be pretty uncomfortable and be out of people's comfort zones. So this is really what I would like to call the back door to the hiring process. So before you even start applying to jobs, it should be pretty much stated that you need to research the company. You need to see, what some recent news are, what the corporate updates are. Do they have any job postings? You got to open up a LinkedIn account and start searching through the company. Who is working there? What type of people have they hired in the past few years? How does your experience match those that they typically hire? So the thing is to remember why you want to take a backdoor is if you go back to the last slide, HR people and internal recruiters have a lot of mandates that they need to fill in a company. So they're seeing thousands and thousands of resumes. And the problem is too, is that there might be a lack of communication between the HR manager and the hiring manager of what they're actually looking for. So you want to get to the people that are that essentially are the decision makers. So by doing that, you want to connect with them on LinkedIn to start getting on their radar. And then what you want to do is you want to find out their work emails, corporate emails. You can easily do that by Rocket Reach, Hunter.io. And essentially what you want to do is basically get in front of them. Make a paragraph about what you saw recently about a corporate update, shows that you've been strategic in the sense of following their company. Make mention about a job posting you saw, and then really just kind of focus on highlighting why you would be a good fit for that position, whether that be a project manager or a different one. And then, as I kind of pointed out here, you really kind of want to show, what are next steps, and essentially how are you going to really improve their team. And then essentially, because hiring managers are busy, it's not necessarily, the one thing that's on their mind. Recruitment is something they do need to do, but they have a lot of other deadlines. So you need to be a little aggressive and really kind of follow up after your first email and then follow up again after your second email. This is going to really ensure that you have a good focus on getting in front of them, getting their attention, and really making sure that you get your point across. So this is what I would suggest you guys focus on when sending an email. If you take a look at this example, it is definitely a bit wordy. There could be some things that could be taken out, but what I wanted to do is kind of highlight a lot of different sections for you guys on what to do to get somebody's attention. Really, when you're trying to find a job, it really becomes more of a sales process. You're essentially selling the thing that you're good at selling, which would be yourself. And you really want to find ways to get on a company's radar. So in this email that I sent across, I'm really highlighting kind of what every company right now is in the news for, is that they're the fastest growing companies in Canada. This is the reason you saw on the news. This caused you to basically look and approach their company website, and you saw that they had a posting. And then what you want to do is really kind of highlight in 3 or 4 points max, very bullet points, how many years of experience you have, what types of experience you essentially have in the type of education. And the reason for that is hiring managers are just going to quickly scan this. They're going to be like, wow, this person has X, Y, and Z. I'm looking for that. I'm going to pick up the phone and call. And if you notice here at the bottom part of the email, you're not sending your CV right now. The point of this is to get their attention and for them to call you or set up a following email for them to set up a time to speak with you. What you want to avoid is giving them everything all at once. You want them to basically gain interest and want to have the conversation with you. Because the problem is with CVs and resumes, there's a million different ways that you can write a resume, a CV. There's people that will say you have to do it this way, people that you have to say it do that way. And a lot of companies, especially hiring managers, have their own preference of how they actually want to read a resume. So you don't want to give them something that they prefer not to read because it's not their style. What you want to do is have the conversation and have a chance to go over any issues that they may have so you can give a live rebuttal to it. This is definitely getting you out of your comfort zone, but this is what's going to change you basically getting into a funnel of where your resume is not going to be looked at to actually having an opportunity to sit with the hiring manager and get on their radar. So let's say you get the interview. This is how essentially it's going to work. About 51% of companies do a three-step interview. To be honest, we're seeing companies do 4, 5. We're even seeing companies right now doing 1. To be honest, I'm not a real big fan of just one interview. I feel it's very short-sighted of both the candidate and the company, especially when you start to look at the purpose of a first interview. But right now, I'd say about 51%, according to the MRI network. You're seeing about a three process. So typically, what you're going to see is the first one's going to be a phone interview. This is to ensure that you don't get thrown into a recruitment process only to find out after 3 interviews or 2 interviews and spending 2 to 3 hours at each interview that you're just not a fit. So the point of the first interview is to just get a better understanding of where you are in your job search. Why are you looking for new career opportunities? The company will try to get a better understanding from a high level of your experience and really kind of just get a better understanding of what you're looking for, just to make sure that it does align. So with the phone interviews and first interviews, say if a company does decide not to do a phone interview and just bring you in, you want to treat the first interview as a first date. It's very high level. It's very much just kind of getting a better understanding of where you're at in your career. And at the same time, it's an opportunity for you to get a better understanding of where they're at in their company. So, if companies are calling you and you're starting to apply for jobs, a couple key things you do want to really make sure that you have a good understanding. And that is whenever answering a phone during this type of the process, make sure you always answer the phone in a very professional manner. That would include simply just hi and then your name, or good day, or something along those lines. There's a lot of times when companies start reaching out to people that are doing interviews, and people are picking up the phone in not a professional manner. And what we're actually seeing through multiple companies is that that's actually turning off the hiring manager, and they actually end up just saying this isn't a good fit because of your phone etiquette. It's definitely a real odd one, but I would just highly recommend during the time you're starting to apply for interviews, always pick up your phone in a very professional manner. The other big thing too is during the first phone interview, companies are going to start asking you for a compensation expectation. It's really just to kind of ensure you're within line with what they're looking for. I find this a bit of a trap because you would really kind of go into it and pigeonholing yourself without actually knowing the opportunity, because you may walk into it and realize the opportunity is a lot more than what you're actually looking for. So when you're asking these type of questions during the first interview, very high level, very much a wide range. I would try to say if the job's coming up, you've done your research on what the typical project manager makes, what at this level, at this style of company, you should just give a range within the 10,000, plus or minus 10,000. So if the typical range is between 50 to 60, you want to just say you're in that range, unless you're expecting more. The other big thing is the second interview. Once you get past the phone screen, what you're going to see here is you're going to see a lot more of scenario-based questions. What essentially it is to get a better understanding of culture fit. They're usually about 45 minutes, and they usually have two people, depending on the size of the company. If it's a large company, they'll probably have the hiring manager and the HR. And they're basically going to start asking you your typical HR style questions, very scenario based, to give an understanding of how you deal with situations, as well as kind of how you're going to fit or align with the management style and with the team. So your typical questions you're going to see: how do you handle stressful situations? What do you do in situations where you're not going to meet the deadline? And then how do you deal with situations where your opinions don't align well with coworkers or management? It's just to get a better understanding of how you work and how well you do align. And then if you make it to the third interview, once again, it's typically with two people. And usually it's with the hiring manager's boss, as well as the hiring manager. And usually at this point, a lot more companies are going with this type of style where the second interview is culture fit, and the third interview is more technical skills. The reason for that is you can't change somebody's personality. You can't change the way someone's going to fit in the culture, but you can train the technical skills and the knowledge. That stuff can be taught. So the second one is to make sure you fit well with the company. And the third one is to get a really better understanding of where you fit when it comes to your technical and skills knowledge. They're not expecting you to answer everything perfectly. It's more of the line of like, okay, how do you compare to other people, and who do we have to invest in to get them from being good to great? So you're going to see anything along the lines of how you run projects, what type of software do you use, what type of technical questions that come up on this, and how do you deal with it, stuff along those lines. And on the third part of the interview, they're going to be asking you for more of a tighter compensation number. So from there, you're going to have to really kind of think about what you think the job is worth. And I would always recommend is to try to stay, if you gave a range between 50 and 60, after kind of going through it, I would try to stay between the 50 and 60 mark. Everyone likes a deal, so everyone does try to kind of get you down on the lower end, but I would try to make sure you stay up in that there. But yeah, that's essentially how the interview works from start to finish. So you got your phone interview, your second interview, and then your third. And after you nail that, the third interview, that's when the compensation comes out for you, or a letter of offer. Interviews, in my opinion, to kind of let you guys know, are an exam and not a pop quiz. So this is how we're going to get you guys to start preparing for an interview. To be honest, this part of the process is something a lot of people don't do, but I'm going to tell you, it's going to make or break you guys going from being okay to great, because you're going to be so much more prepared than people that you're competing for a job that you want. And to be honest, a great company is going to have no issue taking you through how their process works. Because knowing what to expect or what the conversation is going to be revolved around is really going to help you study or prepare to know good talking points and how to tell your career story. So typically, if they call you up for an interview, they're going to probably do a quick pre-screen, or just simply call you up and say, hey, we received your resume. We think it looks great. We want you to come in. Right away, the usual conversation is, okay, what's your availability? Okay, let's align. At that point, as a candidate, you need to ask some of these following questions. How many interviews are going? What is the desired outcome of this interview or of each stage? Or what will be the topics for discussion? Who will be attending the interview? What is the length of the interview? And then a key one, which a lot of people wouldn't ask, but is there anything in particular you should prepare for? We've sat in a lot of interviews with companies where we've seen the weirdest things happen, where a company will take a candidate through first to third interview, decide to bring them in for a fourth interview, and completely dismiss a candidate because they weren't prepared to ask follow-up with one or two specific questions, as simple as what type of management books are you reading, or how do you define a good project manager? Or even how do you deal with adversity? Questions that you typically don't hear during certain parts of the interview stage. It can really kind of have a real big weight on the decision, regardless if you're a great candidate or not. So it's really kind of great to ask these type of questions before getting into the process. It just allows you to kind of know what the tone is and what to prepare for to make sure you nail the interview. So once you get all that information of who's attending, it's now time for you to research. So what you want to do is you want to review everyone's LinkedIn profiles. You want to review any recent announcements that the company's made. Real key one too is jumping on their website and get a better understanding of the corporate values and mission statements. Not knowing what a company's corporate values and mission statements are usually has you rejected as a candidate. A lot of companies, especially in the last few years, have been having a lot of pride and a lot more weight on the questions when it comes to corporate values and mission statements. Now, the reason why you want to do this as well is the hiring manager that you might be meeting with might have just started the position a few months ago. So the questions you're going to ask during the interview can be a lot more pointed at him or at her to get a better understanding of company culture. And what it really does too is it really does show the amount of research that you've done to prepare for the interview. And at the same time, it allows you to get more candid answers to make sure you're making the right decision. And the other thing too is you want to dissect the job description. The reason for it is every job description is very generic. You can probably see 20 of the same. You can probably see 20 companies' job postings, and all of the project managers' descriptions are the same. What you want to do is you want to take that individual job description and dissect it to find things that are a little bit different than everyone else's. And why you want to do that is you want to pull those requirements or those things in the job description of what you're going to do and really use that to highlight your experience and how it relates. Being able to connect those two things is a great selling technique to really kind of show who you are as a person, but at the same time, it also shows an employer that you're able to connect A and B, which equals C. And you'd be surprised, a lot of candidates don't do this. And a lot of candidates that look great on paper, because they don't able to make those connections, are the ones that are not going to be getting the interview. And the other big thing too is your career. You have to make it into a story. The reason for that is if you don't take your career as a story that you want to share and tell, people aren't going to be interested in it. So you want to highlight sections on why you left a company, why you joined another company, highlights within each position, and at the same time, what the learning curves you had to overcome and how you overcame them. Having a better understanding and practicing how you're going to tell your story makes you just stand out a lot more than just, yeah, I left here, I went there. But if you can make it a little bit more interesting, get people to buy into it, it really changes the tone of the interview. So here's how we're going to go, kind of going off of how to prepare to really kind of going from being good to great interviews. When I tell people this, when I take them through these kind of these 3 little tips, a lot of people are like, really, this is really going to make me better? And when they come out, the one response we usually get a lot is, man, I'm really glad I listened to these tips because I could just tell there was just more engagement with what I was saying, or I got a better understanding of what was going to happen next, and these candidates are getting callbacks, especially when they start to reflect on how they did past interviews to this point. So these are very small changes to the way you're going to do it, but the way that you're going to do it is going to basically train you from being good to being great in interviews. And I do want to state too, interviews are horrible, but at the same time, nobody's great at them. Nobody is really good at them. Everyone stumbles, everyone is nervous, but these are some great tips to really kind of focus on. So whenever you're answering any question, you want to remove high-level responses. You don't want to just kind of give the generic response or, yeah, this is how I do this is how I do that. They don't really want to hear that. When they're asking you a question, they want to know more about the information they can pull from your career story. So the best way to look at it is you want to give an answer on how you do something, but then you want to follow it up by giving an actual example, either from your studies or from actual work experience. And then you want to flip it around and relate that experience or how you've done it to how you're going to do it in this new position. Being able to do those type of 3 things makes you go from good to great. And an example of that would be, an interviewer might ask the question is, How do you overcome learning curves? So you would simply take it as I do and give your example. I go do a lot of studying at home. I take webinars. I like to pick up books. I have a mentor in this industry that I call and talk about, and he gives me some great tips, or she gives me some great tips. So you want to talk about how you overcome learning curves. And then you can simply say, in my current role, I had a steep learning curve to overcome X, Y, and Z. And I did that by doing exactly this. And in this position, I can see, this is how you're going to follow up to pull it all together. In this position, I can see the learning curve being X, Y, and Z. And this is how I believe I would be able to overcome them. And this is how I believe I'd be successful at overcoming them. Being able to do that is giving a perfect answer. It's not so much what you're saying, but it's how you're saying it, which really can define you going from good to great. Another thing too, we get this a lot more from client feedback is, and I noticed it a lot before we started really giving stronger tips when I first started my career with candidates, is candidates would show up to an interview, and I'm going to say 90% of the time, your questions are going to be answered throughout the interview. Majority of the times you're having a good interview, it's going to turn from basically you being on trial, people judging you, to just a really good casual conversation. And through that, you're going to have majority of your answers, basically, majority of your questions answered. But the difference is, at the end, when they give you that time, people are still in kind of an old mindset where it's like, do you have any other questions? Even though a lot of the stuff was covered, what you want to do is you want to say, no, I don't have any more questions, but here are the questions I came prepared with, and here is essentially the answers you gave me to the questions. Now, you don't want to start doing 10, 15 questions. You want to take 3 or 4 key questions and recap what they said to you. Now, the reason why you're going to do this is it does highlight that you came prepared, because a lot of times clients will come out, or employers will come out of interviews and simply say the candidate didn't come prepared. They really didn't have a lot of questions for us, even though it was a good conversation. So this really kind of shows that you did come prepared. You came with prepared questions, and then at the same time, you're also then reiterating what they told you were the answers. So you're now reconfirming that these are the answers you had, which is going to help you decide if this is the right opportunity for you. But at the same time, it's showing that you were attentive during the interview. This is, once again, one other thing that will go from good to great. Now, the other thing, coffees is for closers. You're always closing, and as a candidate, this interview is a sales process. So what you want to do is you don't want to ask how you did in the interview. You don't want to ask how you compared to other candidates. Those are awkward questions, and you're putting the hiring manager or HR manager in an awkward spot, because a lot of people don't like to give negative criticism to people right away. They prefer to do it either in an email later on or on the phone, but in face-to-face, people don't want to give that. And that can make people feel uncomfortable, and it's the last thing you want to do in an interview. What you want to do on how to close an interview is highlight that you're interested. You want to show them that you're engaged. This is a very exciting position. What are the next steps? I'm interested in moving forward. How long will it take to you guys to get back? Like, when are you making the next decision? A better sense along those lines. Because what you can do, one of two things. When they say we're going to have a final decision by next Wednesday, and then you haven't heard from them, then it's your right to call them up and be like, hey, when we were during the interview, you mentioned you'd have an answer by Wednesday. It's now Thursday. I just wanted to touch base because I'm still interested in this opportunity. Doing stuff along those lines is what's going to really kind of help you close them off so that you are a candidate that sticks in their mind. Because at the same time, if you go back to the beginning, there's 250 applicants. 6 people are coming across to basically be interviewed, and you want to make sure you're the top one. So here are typical questions you're going to see that a lot of people are going to struggle on. They're questions that you think are super easy, and then when you actually look back and you get the insight from the hiring manager or HR manager, you get a really better understanding of why people are failing at these questions. And I'll go back to it again. People shouldn't be asking brain buster questions or questions to stump you. People should just be asking questions to have a better sense of, are you good for this opportunity, and how well prepared you came. Like I said, Interviews should be exams. They should not be pop quizzes. So the typical question you get a lot, especially at the beginning, is tell me about yourself. Just from my personal experience interviewing at places, I have fallen into this trap tons of times to the point where I find it very an open-ended question. I usually say, what do you want to know about me, right? What do you want? Which isn't necessarily a great way to do it, but so this is kind of a quick way of kind of getting through this this question. Things to avoid: don't get deep in your personal life. It's great that you've done some certain things in your personal side, but make sure it's all career related, and you don't want to ramble on. I'm extremely guilty for rambling, but what you want to look at is this is your highlight reel. This is your moment to give them a 2-minute elevator pitch. So a couple key things you could touch based on. Everyone's going to be different, but here's a guideline. Why did you pursue this industry or this position? Taking through kind of, why you want this opportunity, why you're interested, your biggest takeaways or aha moments in school or throughout your career. Highlight certain achievements, awards, community involvement throughout your career at past positions. You want to just they want to get a better understanding of who you are from a high level throughout your career, what type of person you are. And once again, treat it like a first date. Do what you would do when you're first meeting somebody. You don't want to just kind of word vomit and essentially take them through kind of your entire personal story. Another thing to look at too is where do you see yourself in 5 years? I've had a lot of people reach out to me and tell me, hey, I had this interview last week. They said basically I was, they didn't think I was the right fit long term because I was looking for too much in the next 5 years. So here's the thing, and this can be argued in many different ways, but essentially you don't know what's going to happen between now and the next 5 years. It's impossible. Things in life happen and things change. So you don't want to give hard answers to this question. It's great that if you want to be a CEO or be filthy rich in the next 5 years, drive a Porsche 911, that is great. And that does show that you're super eager and you're driven, but you have to look at it from a different point of view. You have to look at it as hiring managers are really trying to get a better understanding is if what you're looking for in your career in the next 5 years, if they can actually provide that for you. And if what you're looking for, they will invest in to make you that way. And the thing is, when you have big dreams, which isn't a bad thing, but during the interview process, what it could actually show is that you have unrealistic expectations. And if those unrealistic expectations aren't met, you're going to basically leave the company. And all the investment companies have done for you to grow you is basically a waste because you've left. So what you really want to focus on, and I think especially if you're just entering the project management side of things, is you really want to focus on you're looking to gain more experience. You're looking to accelerate your knowledge and responsibility within the project management side of things. And you want to build a better community of project managers, build your network up. What that really shows is that you're focused on your career, and if someone invests in you, you're going to take it serious and you're going to grow. One of my favorite answers to give to this one is, if I look at myself, I don't want to be who I am now in 5 years from now. I want to be better. I want to grow. I want to look back at me and be like, wow, I was very junior at that point, and now look where I am. This is what hiring managers want to hear, and this is really kind of what you should be focusing on. It's just growing your career. The money, the CEO titles, that is going to come, but just not in the next 5 years. The other big one too is, what is your greatest weakness? It is a question that I think should be worded a lot different ways. And I think really kind of the point of this question is just to get a better sense of what other learning curves you're going to be challenged on and how can they help you get through them. That is what this question originally was supposed to be about. But now it's just kind of more of how do you prepare yourself for this meeting and how are you going to give me a political answer, which really I think is just one of those questions companies throw in there to stump you just to see how well prepared you are. So a couple things that you want to do is when you talk about giving your greatest weakness, do not say a weakness that is highlighted as a qualification in the job description. This is key, once again, why you need to review the job description, but you don't want to talk about a weakness that's in there. And when you give a response to this, you do not want to repeat greatest. It's kind of one of those weird things, but you want to really kind of take away that the weakness that you have isn't great. It's just a weakness, and it's something that you're working on. And I've given it a real example here. Is a weakness of mine is blank, and it's something I'm continuously focusing on as an area that requires improvement. And then, because you're saying it, you should list the things you're doing to actually improve it, whatever that might be. Make sure that it is career related and it's not personal related, and really kind of take things through kind of how you're improving it. What it does is this type of answer shows that you know what your weakness is, so you have self-awareness. You are constantly already focusing on improving it, and then you're going to show them how you're improving on it. This is what companies want to hear and what they're looking for. And this is something that you should be focusing on. And as you grow, your weaknesses are going to change. And if you really look at it, maybe your weakness compared to someone else's, maybe you say you're bad at X. 3 other people might be really bad at X, but your X might be a lot higher. It's still look at it as a weakness. It's something that needs to be improved on. A couple other questions. As you grow, you're going to make bad decisions in your career. You're going to job hop. It happens. Everybody does it. The average stay is between 2 to 3 years. But companies are going to ask you, why do you have short stays at these companies? Bad decisions happen, and sometimes you make a great decision, but it turns out you just landed with a bad company. There are bad companies out there. The point of this question isn't to figure out, oh, you've made a bad decision. The question is, get a better understanding of why that company was unable to retain you. And at the same time is, if this company couldn't retain you because of X, if this company can retain you because they have X, well, then that makes sense. But if this company that you're interviewing at is the same as the other company, they want to figure that out so that they have a better understanding of how long your tenure is going to be with them. As I said, a bad hire costs the company $20,000, so they're trying to vet you to make sure you're not a bad hire. The other point is we've all jumped at jobs throughout people's careers, and people make bad decisions. The thing is, what they want to know is, even if you made a bad decision, is how have you changed your vetting process with companies to avoid this happening again? So a lot of things is, I left company A because this was what was going on, and I joined company B because they had this, and this, which would help me in my career. And a couple things I did was I actually vetted the company by asking certain questions to ensure that they didn't have these problems going on, and take them through that. That really kind of shows that you're growing as a person. And this is really kind of what that point of the question actually is. Now, a lot of questions too you'll probably get in a phone interview is, why are you leaving your current position? Why are you looking? The one thing you want to avoid is, don't speak negative of any employer. Do not highlight bad stuff that's going on. What you really want to focus on is what that company lacks in support or in your growth, and essentially what this new employer is actually going to be able to offer you. Once again, this goes to prepping before the interview. And this is why you really kind of want to focus on what this company has and why you want to work there. The best way to kind of look at it is, especially in a project manager role, is a key way would be, I'm looking for more of a structured company when it comes to the processes and project implementation. My current employer has given me great experience, but I really want to focus on becoming more structured and really finesse my processes. That's a great response to why you want to currently leave. And then you can highlight essentially what this company offers, of like, if maybe you've talked to people that work there, maybe you know people, maybe you did research on how they do their processes, but that is a good answer. Another one is, why should we hire you? I've seen this a lot, mostly around the third interview. I really don't like this question at all, and I usually advise clients not to ask it, because you're really asking someone to kind of sell you the pen or sell you the dream. I think everything that you've done already proves why you're a good hire and why companies should invest in you. So what I would really look at is, an idea answer would be why not? It's definitely not an ideal answer. The best way to close them is, you're looking to gain this type of experience, and essentially you bring this type of experience to the table, and this is something that can really help that company grow. This is kind of what you want to focus on when it comes to answering this question of why we should hire you. Now, here's a quick list, which I can send you guys individually. But these are essentially kind of 10 of the questions you guys should be asking to determine if it's a great fit for you. Simple stuff is getting the understanding of the expectations. This really kind of lays out what you're in for. Then you can kind of look at, who's been successful in this position. A lot of companies love to oversell positions. You're going to grow into this. We're going to do that. Get examples. Show proof in the pudding of what's going on. What is the biggest learning curve people face? If you're talking to a hiring manager that just started, you can even ask them, what was the biggest learning curve that you had to face when starting here? What does your onboarding and training look like? Companies that are good that you want to work for have onboarding and training. Instead of just throwing you into the fire, they have onboarding, training, mentoring. Better idea of what this position will look like for the day, what the reporting structure is. All of these stuff are very important and are definitely something I can send you guys just so you have in your back pocket when going through the interview process. Now, the compensation question. So you're going to be asked this numerous times, and this is a tricky one. If you talk to some people, they always try to make the employer tell them first, because the idea of negotiations is that the person who speaks first loses. This is how you're going to better prepare yourself on essentially how you're going to discuss the questions on compensation. So 4 things to consider: how much money you need to survive on, what is the industry average. That's through your research. What do you think the position is worth, and what do you think you're worth? So that is kind of what you need to essentially look at. What do you think this position is worth is really kind of when you're going to be answering this question of compensation towards the end of the interviewing process, when you have a better idea of what they're looking for, and then you have a better idea of what you're worth, because you may be looking at something that is probably maybe a little bit more junior than what the experience you have, so you're going to be on the higher side of the scale. And then when it comes to how much do you need to survive on, sometimes opportunities are great where you're going to take a pay cut because they offer you so much more that it's going to make you more money in the long run. But ideally, you've got to figure out what you need to survive on before accepting an offer. You'd be surprised a lot of candidates don't do this. And then when they're about to sign an offer, negotiations have already happened and they realize, I actually can't take this because I can't afford to. Do your research, industry average. Average salaries are for average candidates. So if you see an average salary of $50,000 for project managers, that is for an average candidate. How you stack up between an average candidate is up to you to define, but you have to really prove that you're better than average throughout the interview. And then essentially, what it's worth to you. Go through it and what is it going to take for you? Maybe there's a longer commute. Maybe, you're going to have to spend more hours here. So maybe it's worth more money. Maybe it's worth less money because what you're getting instead of money, you're getting an experience. And then the same thing, how do you stack up? What unique skills that you have that align well with the company that you think, people that you're competing with don't. Compensation questions are very difficult, very tricky, but really at this stage, especially if you're entering this field, you want to focus on experience and making sure you get paid the minimum, the average salary, and just really kind of blow them out of the water. Multiple offers. This is a great problem to have. It's a problem everybody struggles with. I just helped out an old colleague of mine go through this, where they needed someone to bounce off ideas because they had 2 offers that were exactly the same, and they really need to figure out what was the best. So, we did the plus and negatives, but essentially, these are things that you need to consider, especially if you're just starting out in your career. So here's the things to look at. You want to look at career growth. So how I define career growth is internal training, exposure to projects, best procedures, best practices, the type of mentoring. And then from there, you also want to look at things that just a little bit outside of career growth, but will have an effect, which would be work-life balance, location, company culture, the company reputation. That all ties into career growth and things that, in my opinion, are far more important than career trajectory and compensation. Because if career growth is essentially all there, your career trajectory is going to be exactly where you want it to be when the next 2 to 3 years, and your compensation is going to follow. But when you look at career trajectory, is this going to take you to where you want to go in your career? If you're really focusing on the next, 5 to 10 years, you want to be at this spot, spot A here or spot B, you really need to make sure that what you're going to learn here is really going to get you to that career trajectory. There's a lot of great companies, but there's a lot of great companies that might not give you the right experience to get you to where you're going. So this is something that is definitely key. Compensation too. This is important. Like I said, career growth is a lot more important. Some companies will offer you higher salaries than the average, but they maybe lack a lot of perks, or maybe they have lack company culture and they're giving you more money. You have to look at it as like, why are they, and really determine. At the same thing too, a lot of companies will offer the same compensation. You won't have to be deciding which more money you're going to make, but essentially, which one do you want? And you've got to really look at the big picture and really look at long term. So here's kind of how you're going to go about it once you essentially get an offer. You have multiple offers. What you're going to do, regardless if you have multiple offers or not, do not accept an offer on the spot. Take a minimum of 24, but most likely 48 to 72 hours. You need to review it. And the biggest thing too is during the interview process, it's a very emotional process. You want to take the emotions out of this decision. So what you want to focus on is kind of looking at things, maybe consult a lawyer to go get a better understanding of your contract obligations. And at the same time, it allows you to kind of reflect and really go back to the employer and ask questions that you do need to know, things that aren't clear, things that, maybe you didn't ask in the interview that are important to you now. This is the time to do it in the first 48 to 72 hours. Now, the other thing is too, when it comes to rejecting offers, you don't ever want to do it by email. You don't ever want to leave it via voicemail. Once you've decided on you're going to accept this offer, you need to call up the other company and let them know. It's not easy to do. Breaking up with people is horrible, but you want to be professional about it. So explain your reasoning without giving negative reviews about the process or offer. Why it is that you need to be political, because you don't want to burn bridges for future opportunities with this organization. They may not be right now, but they might be right in 5 years, and you don't want to leave a bad taste, especially in the Ottawa area. It's a small market. Everybody knows everybody. You want to be political. So things to say that are acceptable. The compensation package that you did accept was more in line with what you were looking for. Don't go into details about how, if it's more money or anything like that. Whatever. There was more work-life balance available. They provided more internal training and growth. The commute was better, or you just felt it was personally more aligned with you. But essentially, you want to stay away from negative connotations and make sure you don't burn the bridge. So essentially, I think I'm running out of time here because we only got a couple minutes left. But really, this is kind of what I would suggest as the best practices for your interviews. Hopefully, this was of interest and really kind of helped align you guys well with what we're doing.